My talk is called Testing at the Speed of Awesome with Sauce Labs. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce myself first. My name's Derek Ross. The hats I've worn, I was Special Forces before I came into tech. And then I became a Scrum Master, and I worked as a DevOps engineer. And now I'm a solutions engineer at Sauce Labs. My expertise relies in release engineering, and I spend a lot of time doing pipelines. So today what we're going to do is we're going to do a pipeline demo, and what I'm going to show you is functional testing in your pipeline, and we're going to have network performance capturing. We're going to do some page loads performance, and we're going to pull the results into a job so that you don't have to have an account with Sauce Labs or whatever service you're using, and you can actually view everything right in the job. So we only had 10 minutes. I think we have a little bit longer, but so I don't want to share slides. We're going to be hopping right into code and doing a demo. So we have this repo here. This is our source performance demo.js. This is open. It's an open repo. So if you guys want it, I will be releasing the slides afterwards, or you can come up here and I can give you a link. We have a WebDriver IO example, so I have a couple tests. We're just going to push a change, and we're going to get this to show up in Jenkins. So here we have a multi-branch pipeline job. What a multi-branch pipeline is, if you haven't seen it, is you set it to a particular GitHub repo. I have this set to the repo I just showed you. And in the build configuration, we want to tell it that we want it to look for the Jenkins file, pipeline file, if you're familiar with it. So in the pipeline file, we're going to do three things. We're going to check out the code. We're going to run the test step. And we're going to use the Sauce plugin that is available in Jenkins. And that's going to take your creds from the credential store. And we're going to use Node.js to run an npm install and an npm run test. And that npm run test is just going to kick off a WebDriver IO test with this command. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our results in a way that our Sauce on-demand test publisher can actually pull those results into the job using our API. So we'll go ahead and take a look at how all this is configured. We've got two tests, a sign-in test and a check title test. In our configuration file, we're going to do a few things to get to Sauce Labs. We're going to put our Sauce username and our Sauce access key. We're going to define capabilities. So we want to run this test on Chrome. We want to do it across 4 different OSs. So Windows 10, OS 10.13, Windows 7, and Mac OS 10.14. And then what we want to do is we want to do the 3 latest versions. So latest, latest -1, and latest -2. And to capture network traffic, this is Sauce Lab specific functionality, we're going to set extended debugging to true. And then we're going to set capture performance to true, which is going to capture our page load performance and create a report. Lastly, to pull the jobs into Jenkins, we're going to get the session ID and get the build tag from the job. And we're going to create a string and log it. And so we're going to log the Sauce on-demand session ID and the job name. So I'm going to run these tests from my local. And we can see in the Sauce Labs dashboard that it's going to populate 8 different tests. I had 4 configurations, and I had 2 tests. So for each test, it was going to kick off 4 VMs with those specific combinations. And we can see here on the right that matches the configurations that I just showed you. Once those tests finish, I'll be able to consume the results here. And this is the way a lot of teams do it, is they launch it from their local environment. They either create a local report, or they even log into Sauce and look at the report. But what we want to do is tell the story of a build. We want to know what's happened along that build. So now we're going to kick off a change, and we're going to pull that into a Jenkins job. And in the console, we can see where I created that string, and this string is what's critical to getting the results into the job. So we're just going to do a simple change. We have a change file here, and we're just going to do change 4. Helps if I get off master. So we pulled our feature branch. We've made our change. We see that that change is being tracked by Git. So we add it. And then we're going to push it to our remote repo. So 2 things happen there. So since we have our code pushed up, it's going to kick off. It created a job, and it set that job to review that Jenkins file. And so now we have a new job that we did not have to configure because of the pipeline file, and it's set to the definition of that file. So now it's going to check out the code. It's going to run the test, and then it's going to consume the results here. We'll be able to see that those kicked off here in Sauce Labs with those exact same configurations. And the best part of any demo, waiting on your code to finish. Yeah, here you go. So you can see here in the console that it's actually spitting out those on-demand session IDs along with the build tag. And now it's collecting the report. We can see all those finished here. And we can also see this build will happen in the pull request as we compare the pull request. We see that all checks have passed because it is tracking that last build. We can see that the results have been all published into the job. So you get all of the tests, you get the status, you get the OS browser combinations. And what's really nice about this is that you don't need a Sauce Labs account to view the results. So we can go into the sign-in test. We're going to get a video for each test. We're going to get commands. So the way Selenium works, if you're not familiar with Selenium, is you have a browser. So what Selenium is doing is saying, go to this URL. Go to this element on the page, find the username, put in a username text, find a password, put in a password text, and it goes through all that flow. Each of those commands are sent over the network. And so we can actually see the command that was sent. We can see what the parameters were and what the response was. So if it doesn't find an element, that's going to show up here, which makes it nice to debug. If for some reason that element does appear, you've got a screenshot and you know what the state of the page was at that moment in time. You also get each of the logs associated with the test run. So you get all of Selenium logs, the Selenium server log, but because we had capture performance set to true, you also get a performance.json log. So this has a bunch of metrics in it that you can consume via the API, and you could parse this file, and I'm going to show you a little bit more of those metrics here in a moment. And then you get all the test metadata. So we get the ID, we can see what test ran and what build it ran against. We can add custom tags, so if we want to put product name or product owner or commit ID, we can do that with either custom tags or custom data. And then we can download all these assets from the UI. Because we set extended debugging to true, we also got network performance. So for every single call that went through on this application, we're going to get the network performance and what call came through. We can see what the response headers were and what the request headers were. We can also see any payload that was sent through. So in this particular call, there was an image that was sent through. So we can see what the payload was, and then we can see how long it took to get to the page. Because we had capture performance set to true in our WebDriver IO conf, we can go to the performance tab. For each URL that we load during the test, so we loaded the sign-in page, and then we loaded the inventory page because that was what we wanted to verify that came up when you signed in. So we have 2 different reports. And these performance reports will give us a score based on a baseline of running this test in the past. And then it'll give us the page load time, the time to interaction, and the speed index. So now we know everything's good. We can merge it. And we can also view these results in Sauce Labs. So in Sauce Labs, it looks exactly the same. You need an account to view these results here. But that's what's really cool about the plugin is it brings all of this functionality directly into the job. And for performance, you can also look at the full report. And here you get a few more of the metrics that were in that performance.json. You get your first contentful paint, your first meaningful paint, all the way to your full page load. And then you get a nice graph to display all that information here at the bottom. We get that for each URL. And we can also view the history of each of these as we see fit as we launch these over time. All right, I think I hit about my time mark. Does anyone have any questions on anything I've demoed? It's the Sauce Labs plugin. I could show you that here in the Jenkins instance. It's the Sauce On Demand plugin, excuse me. Any other questions? Yep. The results of the job. So that's a pipeline. That's not a Sauce Labs functionality. That's a pipeline functionality. And so it reports back to the pull request once the job is passed. So if that failed, it would X out, and then you could actually have a setting in the pull request that would say you're not allowed to merge this. Any other questions? In the Jenkins job? Yeah, so that's fairly simple. If you go into the configuration, it's just a multi-branch. So here, I could actually start a new one for you. So there's 2 ways to do this. In my history, I've always used the Github Organization plugin, but it works very similar to the multi-branch pipeline plugin, which is what I just demoed. The multi-branch pipeline you just set to a repository. The organization you set at the organization level. And so the way those work is they look at all the repos below those levels. And so we can actually go look at the configuration for this specific job. And so you can see here that I configured this. All I had to configure with it was this block, which is here's my account, and then find this repository. And then you set which branches you want to include. So you can exclude certain branches from the build. But I prefer doing that in the file because it's more portable. And I'll show you what I mean. And then you set what you want to, or what mode you want to use. So in this case, it was a Jenkins file. And in the Jenkins file, you can set your stages, and then you can do whatever you want to exclude certain branches. So you can do something like if environment.branch name is equal to like develop, do X. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Those results are actually iframed in from the site, so it actually reaches out, so they're all on Sauce Labs. What you can do is if you want those assets, a lot of our large banks that we support want those files on, they want the results on file for a long period of time for compliance. And so we only keep them for 30 days. And so what they'll do is use the API to pull them and then store them somewhere else. Everything I showed you in the UI today is accessible via the API.